of the Supreme Personality of Godhead as the source of transcendental sound, and is therefore above the conception of manifested and unmanifested. Brahma is the complete form of the Absolute Truth and is invested with multifarious energies. The post of Brahma is the highest responsible post within the universe, and it is offered to the most perfect personality of the universe. Sometimes the Supreme Personality of Godhead has to become Brahma when there is no suitable living being to occupy the post. In the material world, Brahma is the complete representation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and transcendental sound, pranava, comes from him. He is therefore invested with multifarious energies from which all the demigods like Indra, Chandra and Varuna are manifested. His transcendental value is not to be minimized, even though he exhibited a tendency to enjoy his own daughter. There is a purpose for the exhibition of such a tendency by Brahma, and he is not to be condemned like an ordinary living entity. So text 49 is completely segregate, because we see that when Prabhupada came to the West, there was no such thing as a Brahmacharini ashram, but he created that. He saw that there's no way he can completely separate men and women, so he created this ashram also for ladies. So we have a Brahmachari ashram, which is where men can practice celibacy, and Brahmacharini ashram, where women can practice celibacy, but not only that, but in connection with the Supreme Lord. So we see that, especially in our community, that interaction is there. But the principle, the underlying principle is that we understand that every living entity, so we understand that opposite gender is part and parcel of the Lord, and they are servants of the Lord, and they are not for my sense gratification. So we interact with the devotees with respect, with love and attention, but we're also very careful and introspective in how we interact, because we may show the world whatever we show, but we can't cheat Krishna, and if we are interacting with a certain motive, we're not introspecting that why am I interacting with the gender of attraction? Is it for service, or is it for subtle sense gratification or subtle sex? Then we are only cheating ourselves. So we can only tell that for ourselves. We're not there to judge others, and we can't tell externally what is happening, because sometimes our senses can deceive us. So sometimes it's not as it appears. So we need to be careful of that. So this is a caution for us to be introspective in ourselves. So, and then on to text 49. Seems like I get the really hard verses on the sex life. But it was talking about how Lord Brahma gave up his body. And previously, in a previous class, Manibandha Prabhu was mentioning that we're not very clear whether Lord Brahma gave up his gross body, or it was a giving up of a subtle body. So I did a bit of research, and in Bhagavad Gita it mentions in verse 15:8 that the living entity in the material world carries his different conceptions of life from one body to another, as the air carries aromas. Thus he takes one kind of body and again quits it to take another. So we understand that we also have the subtle body. And also in Bhagavad Gita 2:13 it says, as the embodied soul continuously passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. A sober person is not bewildered by a change. So we understand that even when we were a baby body, and someone may look at us and look at the photo and they say, where is that person gone? Well, you're the same person, but your body has changed. And together with the change of the gross body, the subtle body has also changed. So we give the example of a child who's 5 years old. He doesn't have that body, the subtle body of interacting with men and women and that sex attraction. That living entity is the same body, but he's not, his consciousness has not developed in the understanding of that. And when he gets older, or she gets older, then there is marriage, and then there's that interaction and the sex attraction and the generation of children. So we even understand in this lifetime that there is a subtle change in the body, because even sometimes if someone is an alcoholic or they have some problems in their life and they go to a psychiatrist or a psychologist, and then many years later maybe they did some very bad things and they meet someone and then they talk to that person and they say, I'm a new person now, I'm not that same person. So that indicates that there is a subtle, that person has given up that subtle mentality, that consciousness. So in this, so from that, understand that Lord Brahma may not have given up his gross body, but he gave up that subtle body, that consciousness, because prior to his attraction to Vak, his daughter, he did create progeny. He created the 10, it says he created his 10 sons, Marichi, Atri, and then they were speaking to him and saying that in text 30, it says they were addressing him respectfully. They were saying, your character is followed for spiritual improvement by people in general. So they were also saints and sages, and they also had that respect for their father, that even though he was doing something that is very bad and is not proper, being attracted and chasing after his daughter, but they addressed him carefully and reminded him that you have a very high position. And even in Bhagavad Gita it says, whatever yat yat achareti, so whatever a great man does, a common man follows. So they reminded him, and then he checked himself, and he didn't act on that desire even though he was subtly thinking it. So because of that, he had to give up that that contaminated attraction for sex, and he gave up his subtle body. And it says there that he had to accept another body to allow himself to be connected with sex. He thus engaged himself in the matter of creation. So he had to also go through, like in modern times, you go through a 12-step program, or you see a psychologist, psychiatrist to correct that wrong mentality. So after doing that, he gave up that subtle body or that consciousness, and then he went on to again in the matter of creation. So we'll find out in the future verses how he created more progeny, and then from them more progeny was created. And Prabhupada mentions there that in Bhagavad Gita 7:14 purport, it says there that one should practice cleansing oneself externally and internally, and he should learn to become simple in behavior. He should not do anything which is not sanctioned by the spiritual injunctions. He should not indulge in sex outside of married life, for sex is sanctioned in the scriptures only in marriage, not otherwise. Penances, so that's penances and austerities of the bodies. And then in 17:16 purport, Prabhupada mentions there that to make the mind austere is to detach it from sense gratification. It should be so trained that it can be always thinking of doing good for others. The best training for the mind is gravity in thought. One should not deviate from Krishna consciousness and must always avoid sense gratification. So one needs to purify one's nature, and to purify one's nature is to become Krishna conscious. So this word austere, to become austere in mind, it gives that connotation of we are restricting ourselves, we are practicing abnegation. But even we see in the material world that we have this discipline to study really hard. We don't go out partying or enjoying, and we have that self-discipline. I have an exam coming up, I have an assessment, and I'm going to study. Or if I want to look after my health, I'm eating healthy food. I want to look after my body, I want to get a toned body, I'm doing some exercise. So that is also austerity of the mind and the body. So why is it that when we hear performing some austerity for spiritual elevation, for actually fulfilling our human mission in this life, then we think, oh no, this is too much and this is not right. But when it comes to the body, for a good body, good health, and to get a good career, to be self-disciplined and study, then we do that. But when it comes to spiritual austerity, then we don't want to do it. So then we need to be introspective and understand and try to inquire that if I'm doing this for material things, just like every day I'm eating 3 times a day, most people, then I need to also eat and feed my spiritual life, like to develop my spiritual consciousness. And that's why we have this human life, this human mission, that we shouldn't forget the goal of our life in this world is not just to live a good life, a healthy life, to do good for others on a material platform, but to do good for others on a spiritual platform, which is eternal, and it continues on, and it's progressive, and then ultimately we'll go back home, back to Godhead, where there's no birth, there's no birth, death, old age, and disease, and we'll be eternally living a blissful life. So Prabhupada mentions in verse 7:11 that I am the strength of the strong, devoid of passion and desire. I am sex life which is not contrary to religious principles, O Lord of the Bharatas, Arjuna. In the purport, Prabhupada elaborates, the strong man's strength should be applied to protect the weak, not for personal aggression. So it's just a matter of changing one's mentality. Just like Prabhupada gives the example of 2 men, one is Krishna conscious and one is acting on the material platform, and they're both working in the office. The man who's working in a material consciousness, come Friday night, he goes out partying, goes out to the club. But a Krishna conscious person, he's doing the same external activities as the other person in the office. But when he goes home, he has an altar, he engages his money to come and visit the temple or the church or the mosque. He's using his money for God and in God's service. And it says here that sex life, according to religious principles, dharma, should be for the propagation of children, not otherwise. The responsibility of parents is then to make their offspring Krishna conscious. So we see in this verse that Brahma, after giving up that subtle body, he thus engaged in the matter of creation. So he went on to continue the further creation. So his sex life was used in the service of the Lord, because the living entity desired to enjoy, and there's different grades of consciousness. So some are more progressive and they are closer to God, some are a bit further away. So this material world is created to give the living entity a chance to get a material body, to engage in the material world, and to understand ultimately that we can't enjoy separately from Krishna. So he did this service of creating progeny to give an opportunity for souls to take on a gross body as they desired, to try to fulfill their desires, and also an opportunity to progress in one's consciousness, to purify and elevate one's consciousness and go back home, back to Godhead. In Bhagavad Gita 17:23, it says there that in the purport, Prabhupada says there that any activity which is aimed at the Supreme, Om Tat Sat, that means for spiritual elevation. Krishna consciousness is a scientific execution of transcendental activities. which enables one to return home back to Godhead. There is no loss of energy in acting such a transcendental way. So we are all in this world, and we have Urmila Mataji who's coming, and she's going to be speaking on Kariya Dharma. So when we come to this world, sometimes when we joined, also in the olden days, sometimes people joined and then they gave up their studies or they gave up their jobs. So Prabhupada explains there that we need to engage, like in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna was instructing Arjuna to fight. And because Arjuna was a warrior, a Kshatriya, and he had to engage according to his nature. So Krishna was telling Arjuna that even if you want to renounce, he didn't want to fight. He said that you will still act according to your nature, but it will be separate from me, and then you will be culpable for the reactions of that action. So Prabhupada mentions in this purport 1723, there is no loss of energy in acting in such a transcendental way. So we can act according to our nature. If someone is inclined towards gardening, they can do gardening. For Krishna, like we have here, we have devotees propagating flowers. We have Prabhu planting lots of roses and marigolds. And then those flowers are used as garlands for the Lord and for worship of the Lord and his devotees. And if someone has that nature to build, like we have Mahamantra Prabhu, he's a builder, so he engages that in building houses and building the temple for Krishna and his devotees. So whatever nature we have, we use it and dovetail it in Krishna's service. Then that is not misusing our energy. It says there's no loss of energy. That energy will actually rejuvenate us and enliven us, because it's connected in a transcendental way with the Lord. And furthermore, in Bhagavad Gita 8.6 purport, Prabhupada says that sacrifices are purifying. Sacrifices that purify one's existence and elevate one to the spiritual plane should not be stopped. So Prabhupada is here clearly saying that according to our nature, we need to act. But we use that in service to Krishna, and that will elevate us. So it's not that we compare ourselves to others, because someone's nature can be completely different from ours. We can look to others for inspiration, but we need to also see according to our nature, and we need to also consult with Guru, Sadhu and Shastra. We all need to be intelligent and use our God-given intelligence and become independent and thoughtful, not to be following blindly, but to follow consciously with intelligence and understand and inquire. If someone says, oh, for example, someone says, clean the floor and use the mop and broom. No, actually, I'll use this example. Swayam Bhagwan Maharaj, I often listen to his class, so he was giving this class that there were these 3 workers working and on the road, on the field. And one was digging the hole, and then the second person was putting the seed in, and the third person was covering the hole. So he was seeing this person every day, and then one day he saw the person was digging the hole, and then another person was covering the hole. And then this person went to ask, oh, what are you doing? He said, oh, I'm doing my job. I'm digging the hole. And then the other person says, oh, I'm doing my job. I'm covering the hole. And they said, oh, the other person who was meant to put the seed in wasn't here. So, but I'm just doing my job. So just being blind, we need to use our God-given intelligence and adjust accordingly. Not that we just blindly, mechanically just do whatever we're told to do. And that's why we need to think. Even in spiritual life, we see that we bow down. I remember not too long ago, there was a class also. Indradumna Swami was giving a class. One devotee was getting initiated, and he was saying, when we come to the temple room and we bow down, we don't just go, oh, Jai Hari Bol, and get up. Why are we bowing down? We're bowing down to our spiritual master, to Srila Prabhupada. We're chanting the pranam mantras. We are bowing down to Krishna. we are asking them for mercy and blessings to also help us to purify our consciousness and apply this knowledge. So in every step of our life, we need to question why we're doing what we're doing, and then adjust accordingly. So we see even in our daily life, we go on, but we need to, something that also I just wanted to mention as a side thing, that I was listening to Prabhupada's class once, and he says, or actually I read something, Prabhupada was saying to a devotee, I can see, but you cannot. And then the devotee was thinking, oh, maybe Prabhupada can see Krishna, and we cannot. And then Prabhupada again repeated, I can see, but you cannot. I can see that the light is on, but no one is in that room, or the fan is going, or the tap is running. So sometimes I pass by here, and this fan is on full blast, and no one is in the temple room, 4 o'clock. So most likely the fan was on from lunchtime right till 4 o'clock. So if you're passing by, it may not be, like in the olden days, they say, Prabhu, it's not my service. No, we are all servants of Krishna. We all have our service, and we all may be busy. But we need to also use our common sense and see, oh, the light is on. What would Prabhupada think, What would Krishna think? It's not that when there's someone around, that's only when then I act. We need to do the right thing even when so-called no one is looking. Of course, there's always someone looking. The elements, the witness, the wind god, the sun, there's always some witness. As we hear from Mahabharata, Yudhishthira was saying that there's nowhere in the world that there's no one present. There's always someone present. There's always a witness. So in every activity we do, we need to do it consciously. Everything can be used in Krishna's service, and we conserve Krishna's energy. Even here, as this purport is saying, even sex life can be engaged in Krishna's service to propagate children and to give them Krishna consciousness, to give them an opportunity to also progress in their life, to